They pull away the moment things get good. You finally feel close, and suddenly they go cold, distant, or even cruel. You've been told they're emotionally unavailable, that they just don't care enough. But what if I told you they're not running from you? They're running from a primal terror so deep it feels like death to them. A terror Carl Jung would instantly recognize as the shadow swallowing their entire sense of self. Hi, I'm Roman. Today I'm taking you inside the avoidant psyche, not to excuse them, but to finally understand what's really happening when they disappear, and why loving an empath is the most dangerous trigger of all. The avoidant is not withholding love because they lack it. They are running from a terror so primal, so absolutely devastating, that they have no language for it. And until you understand what they are secretly thinking every moment they pull away, you will remain trapped in a cycle of pursuing someone who appears to be retreating from connection itself. But here's what changes everything. They are not retreating from you. They are retreating from a psychic annihilation they experienced so long ago that it lives in their body as pure sensation, wordless, ancient, and utterly consuming. The world sees avoidant attachment as a choice, as emotional laziness, as someone who simply refuses to do the work of intimacy. But Jung understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to grasp. What we cannot speak becomes what controls us. The shadow, that repository of everything we have disowned about ourselves, does not disappear when we refuse to acknowledge it. It grows stronger. It operates autonomously. And for the avoidant, their shadow contains the most dangerous truth of all. That they once needed someone so desperately, so completely, that when that need was met with abandonment or engulfment or shame, something inside them shattered. Not metaphorically, actually shattered. And the only way that child survived was to make a vow so absolute that it became the architecture of their entire personality. Never again. Never need. Never depend. Never let anyone close enough to cause that kind of destruction. But you must understand what happened in that original wound. The avoidant child did not simply learn that vulnerability is risky. They learned that emotional need equals existential threat. When they reached out for comfort and received coldness, or when their natural dependence was met with a parent's overwhelming neediness that swallowed them whole, their developing nervous system made a catastrophic association. Closeness equals death. Not physical death, but something worse, the death of the self. The complete dissolution of their boundaries, their autonomy, their very sense of existing as a separate being. And so they constructed what Jung called the false self, a persona of radical independence that looks like strength but is actually the most elaborate defense mechanism the human psyche can create. This is not authentic autonomy. This is armor masquerading as identity. So now you know what they are fighting in the relationship, not you, but the possibility of needing you. They won't let it happen, can't let it happen, because they're at risk of seeing their mask shatter, which would mean death. They would rather be miserable and lonely rather than to acknowledge to their self their own vulnerability. And for the avoidant, loving an empath is the most dangerous situation they could be in for their psyche. The avoidant walks through the world projecting competence, self-sufficiency, a kind of untouchable completeness. But beneath that carefully maintained surface lives a fragmented inner world they cannot let anyone see. Because to reveal that fragmentation would be to admit that the persona is a lie. And if the persona is a lie, then they must face what they have spent their entire life running from. That they are, in fact, desperately vulnerable. That they need connection just as much as anyone else. That their independence is not freedom, but a prison they built with their own terrified hands. So what are they actually thinking when you reach for them and they pull away? What runs through their mind in those moments when everything in you is screaming for closeness and everything in them is screaming to flee? They are thinking, if I let you in, I will disappear. Not that you will hurt them, though that fear exists too, but something far more terrifying. That in the presence of true intimacy, the boundaries that hold their fragile self together will dissolve. That they will be swallowed, consumed, annihilated by the very connection they simultaneously crave. They are thinking, my love feels like death to me, because love, real love, requires vulnerability. and vulnerability is the thing that almost destroyed them once before. They are thinking, I am terrified that I am fundamentally defective. That if you really see me, if you witness the need I have disowned, the longing I have buried, the desperate child still crying in the basement of my psyche, you will confirm what I have always suspected. That I am too much and not enough simultaneously. That there is something wrong with me at my core that makes me unworthy of the very love I am pushing away. And perhaps most devastating of all, they are thinking, closeness triggers a nervous system collapse. I have no words for. Okay, so now you entered the mind of the avoidant. Can you feel what they feel? I believe you do, because if you got close to an avoidant, you are probably an empath. And if you are, you will understand. And to be fair, you probably already knew intuitively what Carl Jung discovered about the avoidant personality. The nervous system doesn't collapse in the traditional sense. This is a somatic reality. When intimacy deepens, when someone gets too close, their body responds as if they are under threat. Heart racing, breath shallow, a sense of walls closing in. It is not psychological discomfort, it is a survival response, ancient and overwhelming. And here's the catastrophic bind that keeps them trapped. Intimacy activates the original trauma. When things are going well, when connection deepens, when you look at them with love in your eyes, their system does not register safety. It registers danger. Because the last time they felt this vulnerable, this exposed, this close to someone, they were hurt in a way that rewired their entire relational blueprint. So they pull away precisely when things get good. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness feels like the prelude to abandonment. Their unconscious has learned that the more you matter, the more devastating it will be when you inevitably leave or consume them. You experience this as abandonment, as rejection, as proof that they don't love you enough. But what is actually happening inside them is a complete nervous system takeover. They are not choosing to withdraw. They are flooding, fragmenting, losing all sense of self-cohesion. In those moments, they cannot access the part of them that loves you, that wants you, that knows you are safe. All they can feel is the overwhelming need to escape before they are destroyed. And because this happens at a level beneath conscious thought, they cannot explain it to you. They cannot say, I am not leaving because I don't care. I am leaving because staying feels like dying. Jung spoke of complexes, these autonomous psychic fragments that hijack consciousness when triggered. Does this sound familiar, what I'm describing? These symptoms from the avoidant: heart racing, shallow breathing, panic, precisely when everything seems to be going well. Please tell me in the comments. Many of you have shared your stories, and I'm so touched and grateful for it. Connecting with you is the best part of making videos, in my opinion. The avoidant carries an attachment complex so powerful that when it activates, it takes over completely. Their rational mind, their conscious desire for connection, their genuine love for you, all of it becomes inaccessible. The complex runs the show, and the complex has one directive, one purpose, one mission: survive, get away, protect the self at all costs. This is why your logic cannot reach them, why your reassurance bounces off, why your love, no matter how genuine, cannot penetrate the defense. Because the terror they are responding to is pre-verbal. It was encoded before they had language, stored in the body as pure sensation and implicit memory. Their attachment system is not broken. This is what you must understand. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function based on the data it received. If closeness meant danger, if vulnerability led to pain, if emotional need resulted in abandonment or engulfment, then of course the system learned to avoid those things. The avoidance nervous system is protecting a shattered core. It is doing its job with devastating efficiency. And until they can see this, until they can recognize that their independence is not freedom but a prison, nothing changes. The pattern repeats, the dance continues, and everyone suffers in ways they cannot name. And that's what I really want you to take from this video, is that you are not the cause of it. The pattern is engraved very deeply, and you won't be able to heal it. The avoidant needs their own healing and meeting with their shadow. The part of their psyche they are hiding, their fear of abandonment. The realization that changes everything does not arrive like morning light. It arrives like an earthquake. The avoidant must come face to face with a truth so threatening to their entire psychological structure that their mind has spent decades, perhaps a lifetime, constructing elaborate defenses to avoid it. That truth is this: my independence is not freedom, it is a prison I built to survive, and now it is suffocating me. But here's what makes this realization so catastrophic. The avoidant has organized their entire identity around the narrative of self-sufficiency. I do not need anyone. I am complete alone. Connection is optional, a luxury I can take or leave. This is not just a preference. It is the cornerstone of their psychological survival. To question it feels like questioning whether the ground beneath their feet is solid. Jung understood this dynamic through his concept of the persona, the mask we show the world. For the avoidant, the persona of independence is not just a mask, it is a fortress. Behind that fortress lives the disowned child who learned that emotional need equals annihilation. That child is still there, frozen in time, waiting for someone to finally see them. But the adult avoidant cannot see this child. They have exiled that part of themselves into what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is simply everything we cannot accept about ourselves. For the avoidant, the shadow contains all the vulnerability they had to suppress to survive. The longing for connection, the terror of abandonment, the grief of never being truly seen, the rage at having to perform invulnerability while bleeding internally. These feelings are so threatening to the avoidant's conscious identity that they get pushed into the unconscious, where they operate autonomously, hijacking behavior in ways the avoidant cannot understand or control. This is why an avoidant will pull away precisely when things get good. It is not a conscious choice. It is the shadow taking over, protecting them from the very thing they secretly want most. You might ask, Roman, but why someone afraid of abandonment would avoid relationship? They are going to be alone, so what is the difference? And this is the reason why I insisted so much on the timing. They always seem to want to leave the moment things are good. They have never been better. And it's always precisely the moment they chose. Why? Because if the connection deepens, losing you would mean death to them. So they would rather suffer alone than allow the relationship to go further. Please, tell me in the comment if in your life, the avoidant decided to break the relationship, either by becoming more distant, or not responding anymore, or becoming cruel, at the precise moment you felt like the relationship was going strong. Because this is what is probably the most brutal about these relationships. Usually the empaths see their world crumble. They could never have imagined the relationship would break now. And if, like me, the moment did not make any sense to you, now you know exactly why it happens exactly at that stage of the relationship. The mechanism is invisible to them. They experience it as a sudden need for space, a feeling of being trapped, a vague sense that something is wrong. But what is actually happening is that intimacy has triggered the original wound, and the shadow is executing its primary directive: survive at all costs. Jung also spoke of the Anima and Animus, the contrasexual aspects of the psyche that govern how we relate to others. For the avoidant, this internal figure is often wounded, distrustful, convinced that closeness equals danger. When they encounter a real person who wants genuine intimacy, their anima or animus projects all the original trauma onto that person. You become the mother who engulfed them, the father who abandoned them, the caregiver who punished their need. You are not actually those people, but the avoidant psyche cannot tell the difference. The past collapses into the present. The trauma becomes now, and they run, not from you, but from a ghost that has haunted them since childhood. This is the psychological mechanism you cannot see from the outside. This is why your love, your patience, your reassurance does not penetrate their defenses. You are speaking to the conscious adult, but the shadow and the wounded anima are running the show. Until the avoidant can turn inward and face these disowned parts of themselves, the pattern will repeat with every person they encounter. The tragedy is that most avoidants do not even know this internal war is happening. They genuinely believe they simply prefer solitude, that they are just not wired for deep connection. But Jung would tell you that no one is wired that way naturally. Humans are relational beings. When someone consistently avoids intimacy, it is not a personality trait. It is a wound pretending to be a preference. If you like this kind of analysis, I'm writing my life's work, The Complete Guide to the Empath's Awakening. I want it to be a collaborative process, a guide made by the community for the community. Check it out in the description. The path to integration begins with a single terrifying step. The avoidant must stop running from their own inner world. They must turn toward the discomfort instead of away from it. This is not about forcing themselves to stay in relationships that feel unbearable. It is about developing the capacity to tolerate the sensations that arise when intimacy gets close. Because what they are actually feeling is not danger, it is the memory of danger. The body is replaying an old script and the mind is believing it is happening now. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole by integrating all the fragmented parts of the self. For the avoidant, individuation means descending into the shadow and reclaiming the vulnerability they abandoned. It means sitting with the terror that says, if I need you, I will be destroyed, and discovering through direct experience that this is not true. Not anymore. Not with a person who is safe. Not in a nervous system that can learn new patterns. But here is what most people miss. The avoidant cannot do this work while they are in a relationship that is demanding they change. The pressure to be different, to be more open, to be more available, only reinforces the original wound. It confirms their deepest fear, that who they are is not enough, that their natural state is unacceptable, that they must perform a version of themselves to be loved. This is exactly what happened in childhood. They learned that their authentic emotional needs were too much, too inconvenient, too threatening to the caregiver. So they shut those needs down and became the good child, the independent one, the one who does not ask for anything. If you are partnered with an avoidant and you're constantly pursuing them, trying to get them to open up, expressing frustration at their withdrawal, you are inadvertently recreating the conditions that caused the wound in the first place. You become the engulfing parent, and they become the child who must escape to survive. This is not your fault. You have needs too. You deserve connection and presence and reciprocity, but you must understand the dynamic you are caught in. The more you pursue, the more they retreat. The more you demand vulnerability, the more their system perceives threat. This is the anxious-avoidant trap, and it is one of the most painful relational patterns in human psychology. So what does the avoidant actually need to integrate? Not more space. They have plenty of space. They have built an entire life around space. What they need is a new relationship with vulnerability itself. They need to learn, slowly and somatically, that emotional exposure does not equal annihilation, that they can feel fear and stay present anyway, that they can express a need and the world will not collapse. This learning cannot happen through intellectual understanding alone. The wound is not in the thinking brain. It is in the body, in the nervous system, in the implicit memory structures that formed before language. The avoidant must engage in practices that rewire these deep patterns. Somatic therapy, where they learn to track sensations in the body without immediately fleeing into the mind. Internal family systems work, where they can dialogue with the parts of themselves that are stuck in survival mode. Attachment-focused therapy, where they can slowly build tolerance for intimacy in a relationship that does not punish or abandon them for their fear. But perhaps most importantly, they must grieve. They must grieve the childhood they did not have, the parent who could not attune to them, the years they spent believing that their need was shameful. Jung understood that grief is the gateway to transformation. We cannot integrate what we have not mourned. The avoidant has spent their life bypassing grief through activity, through achievement, through the performance of not needing. But the grief is still there, waiting. And until they turn toward it, until they let themselves feel the full weight of what they lost, they will continue to organize their life around avoiding that feeling. The moment of transformation comes when the avoidant can finally say, not just to a therapist, but to themselves and eventually to another person, I am afraid of losing myself in you, and I want to learn how to stay. This sentence contains everything. The acknowledgement of fear, the recognition of the pattern, the expression of desire, the commitment to growth. It is the opposite of the avoidant's usual strategy, which is to feel the fear and disappear without explanation. When an avoidant can speak this truth, something shifts in the relational field. The partner is no longer left in confusion, wondering what they did wrong, whether they are too much or not enough. The avoidant is no longer alone with their terror, performing independence while drowning internally. There is suddenly space for something new. Not immediate resolution, but honest communication. Not perfect intimacy, but authentic struggle. And that struggle, that willingness to stay in the discomfort and name it, is where healing happens. Jung believed that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, even when it looks like it is moving toward destruction. The avoidance defenses are not the enemy. They are outdated protections that once served a vital function. The work is not to destroy these defenses, but to update them, to help the psyche understand that the conditions have changed. You are no longer a helpless child, dependent on an unsafe caregiver. You are an adult with agency, with choice, with the capacity to leave situations that are genuinely harmful. You do not need these walls anymore, but the psyche will not believe this through logic alone. It must be shown through experience, again and again, that vulnerability can be safe. This is why the avoidance healing journey is so slow and so frustrating for everyone involved. The nervous system does not change quickly. It changes through repetition, through thousands of small moments where the expected catastrophe does not occur, where they express a need and are met with care instead of punishment, where they show vulnerability and are not abandoned, where they let someone close and do not dissolve. Each of these moments is a tiny renegotiation of the original contract their psyche made with reality. And over time, with enough of these moments, the system begins to relax. The hypervigilance softens. The walls lower, not all at once, but incrementally. And the avoidant discovers something they never believed possible, that they can be both connected and intact, both vulnerable and whole, both intimate and autonomous. This is not the false independence of defensive isolation. This is true autonomy, rooted in a self that is integrated enough to risk connection without fearing annihilation. This is the gift on the other side of the shadow work. But it requires walking through fire first.